On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Regan. And Regan was in a toxic relationship with a future faking abuser. It's a story of belief systems, moving goalposts, breadcrumbs, Hoover tactics, and looking inward in the aftermath. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. This is a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com if you want to be a part of our show. At the top of the page, we have a button that says guest form. Click on that button, fill out the form, and we will go from there. Another way to be on our show is to be part of our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode. And again, you go to narcissistapocalypse.com. On the side of the page, there's a floating button that says send voicemail. You can read your letter. It records up to 5 minutes. If you need 10 minutes, press it twice, 15, 3 times. And if you do not want to read the letter yourself, please send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com and put letters to my narcissist in the subject line. And me or my old pal Melissa will read the letter for you instead. And what else do we have going on? Well, we have a Patreon, everyone. If you want to support our show, become a patron of our Patreon. We have episodes that never made it to air, follow-up episodes with former guests. We have pop culture kind of episodes that are, in this kind of vein, narcissist related. And we have online support groups through Zoom every Wednesday and Saturday. And we also have our own private support forum, which is a little bit safer than Facebook. It's off of Facebook. And, it's growing. So everyone, join our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. And other ways that you can help support us right now, we have a questionnaire we would like you to fill out. It's a demographic questionnaire. We are giving away 10 $25 gift cards in a raffle if you fill out this questionnaire. And we are doing that draw on September 1st, 2021. So please help us out and fill out that questionnaire for us. That will be in our actual description of the show. We will leave the link to that. And now I just want to say a big thanks to Regan for doing the show, being our guest. She did a great job, and we talk about a lot of things. We point out a lot of things, and Regan really gets into the depths of how she was feeling and her struggles, not just in it, but in the aftermath. She did a great job. I just want to thank her from the bottom of my heart for doing it. We recorded a couple of times because I screwed up the sound in the second part, but I think this is pretty good sound this episode. So I just want to, we're trying to get better at doing that. And now, without further ado, here is my episode with Regan. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Regan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am good. And today we're going to hear your story of your relationship. It was an abusive relationship, emotionally abusive. And I just want to thank you for being here. I know you're going to help a lot of people. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. And without further ado, Regan, The floor is now yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for having me. I've been listening to this podcast now probably over a year, so never thought I would be in this, situation, or I guess I never thought I would have the courage to go on. But, recently something just came over me and I was like, hey, why don't I go on? Why don't I tell my story? I know so many people out there have helped me, so I'm hoping I can help some people as well. I'm definitely a little nervous, but yeah, let's get started. So I guess a little bit about me. I know that's usually where we start. I had a great childhood. I had a great life. A lot of people looking in would, and it was true, they would say cookie cutter type of family, mom, dad, married for 30 years. I have a younger sister. And yeah, it was a good childhood. But I always felt like growing up, either at school or, maybe even in my family, and this was probably pressure I put on myself, but I always felt like I had to go above and beyond. I had to do cartwheels, backflips, just to get noticed or to get heard or understood. I did this a lot at school. And I think, having that from my childhood, I brought that with my relationships. Whatever the other person liked, I liked, right? I always felt like I had to fit in everyone's molds, or, okay, you like this sport team, I like this sports team. But, I was a people pleaser. I wanted to make everyone happy. I wanted to make everyone comfortable. If someone had an issue, I was always just putting other people before myself. Wanted to just take everyone's pain away. And while doing that, I didn't realize I was just focusing all of my energy on everyone else, right? And not on myself. So I think that obviously led me to the certain relationships that I ended up in. Not all my relationships were abusive. Obviously, the one I'm on here to talk about was a 5-year relationship. But I always found myself getting in these relationships where there was someone else involved, either another girl that was involved. And, I again, the backflips and the cartwheels to be noticed. I saw everything as a competition. I had to win. I needed to win their love and approval. And that's how I entered most of my relationships, including the one I'm about to talk about right now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you do things because you want to do things or because you're expected to do them?
I mean, mostly, or I guess up until this point, right now I'm a year and a half in with therapy, mostly because I felt like I had to. If someone else wanted me to be somewhere or do something, I would do it because I didn't want to disappoint them or make them mad or annoyed. So yeah, most of the time, if someone else wants me to do something, I would say. So yeah, I guess starting, they say the love bombing, right? So with my ex, it was a little weird. So we met through a mutual friend. This was back in college. And, so I met him and we stayed friends. I'm saying this kind of with air quotes, right? We stayed friends for a while before we started dating. I was not interested. I saw him. I obviously at first thought he was attractive and I thought he was smart and, he was the big shot on the football team. So physically I was attracted to him. I thought he was cute, but his personality, I don't know. I just didn't really like him at first. He was just one of my friends' roommate. That's all he was to me. So I kind of blew him off for a while, which I guess is a little bit different than how some of these stories go where, they were hooked right away and love at first sight and all of this. I would say, though, once I did let my guard down and, we obviously started dating, the tables turned very quickly. But during this time when we were, just friends, I just remember he was always there. He was always pursuing me. He was always trying to talk to me. He was always trying to be around me. I think at one time he made a comment. It was my 21st birthday and we all went out and they had this whole night planned for me. And he said to his roommates, I still have dibs on her, so he just was pursuing me for a very long time. At this point, this was the first time in my life that I was single. I always was in a relationship. So I was just having fun. It was my senior year of college, the first semester, and I was just enjoying having fun, flirting with people and just hanging out with my friends. So he, this person wasn't really someone that I had on my mind. In fact, when he would reach out to me, I'd almost roll my eyes. I was like, oh, him again, wishing it would be other people that I had my eyes on at the time, I guess you can say. So fast forward a few months, into being friends, or I guess even into the next school year now. I remember the holidays rolling around, and again, I was used to always having a boyfriend, so not having one, I remember sitting with my roommate, just having girls talk, and I was like, well, there's always, let's just call him John, right? There's always John. I can always just date or go with John. So that just, I say that just so you can tell from the story that the tables are really turned at this point. After that, then, February rolls around, Valentine's Day, we start talking. And at this point, I do start to like him. And again, back to what I said about, how I entered relationships, there were 2 other girls in the picture, and that was very known. He would tell me, oh, you're my number 3. I have 2 other girls, you're my number 3. So to me, right, competition, there's 2 other girls. I have to beat them. I have to win. I have to win his love. So in a way, it became a game. And I didn't realize that how unhealthy this was at the time, but, that is how it started. So love bombing, I would say it didn't last too long. When I met him, I did find him annoying, but in a way, annoyingly funny. I know I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but the first night I met him, we ended up at my dorm room with his roommates, my roommates, and I remember he was trying to get us to buy him pizza. And I was like, who does this guy think he is? Why would I just buy him a pizza? And he was kind of demanding it, but joking. So, I from the very beginning just found him to be attractive, but just kind of like a douchebag in a way, annoying. But anyways, fast forward, we're starting to talk, we're starting to date. It's around Valentine's Day at this time, which ended up being around Valentine's Day, our anniversary, moving forward. But one of the first love bombing memories I have is, again, we're in college, right? So I went home for the day, and I came back to my dorm room, and I had a dozen red roses and chocolates and a teddy bear and a handwritten letter. And the handwritten letter just said how much he likes me and how he's so nervous for this date and how he put a lot of thought into this date and, just what he likes about me. And he's nervous, but be ready for 6 p.m. and I'm going to pick you up and we're going to have a whole night planned. So again, going back to who he was, I was like, wow, like he has a soft side. Like he's not just this, football player that thinks he runs the show, runs the school. I mean, he must really care for me. He's writing me a handwritten letter. He's taking me on a date. Like I was, that was, I guess, the first time that I was the love bombing. Thinking back, I like to say that the first year that we dated was good. And I always found that I kept going back to that. I kept going back to that first year of dating thinking, why was it so easy back then? I didn't even try. And he was just pursuing me and, sending me texts and Snapchats saying you're the most beautiful woman in the world. And, you're mine. And, just compliments left and right, taking me out on day dates and, going by the ocean and taking out these little cars that we drove around this little city. And I just remember as the years went on, and this was a 5-year relationship, just to put it into perspective, I just kept going back to that and wanting to get to that moment. I laugh because he got me flowers 3 times in our relationship. One in the beginning when he was trying to win me over right before we started dating. The second time was a year after that. So the next Valentine's Day and a year into our relationship. and after I broke up with him. So you can see it was, polar opposites. He did what he had to get me. And then towards the end, which obviously we'll get to. So yeah, once I guess he had me, the tables did turn. But trust, going over trust building, right? In the beginning, we talked so much. We used to lay there, in his bed and talk for hours. And, he would tell me about his ex-girlfriend, which was his high school sweetheart. And it's funny because the story he told me, and then if I ever brought it up again, oh, I didn't say that, or that's not how it went down. But again, it was a competition. He told me that his high school sweetheart, they were together for 3.5 years and she was his first, and, telling me all these stories of his dad dropping him off at her house and, just everything that they would do. He thought he was going to marry her. And I just remember feeling so jealous of this girl that I didn't know. I was like, oh, I wanted to be that person for him. I want him to think all those things of me. He talked a lot about his family, and before I met them, he talked them up so much, like they were so mean and they were so hard on him, and they had, expectations so high for him and his sister. So in the beginning, it was just a lot of, talking and just getting to know each other.
So he's playing the victim card at this point, and, that feeds into you, I guess you're being a people pleaser. You're a fixer. I'm going to kind of say maybe you're a fixer as well, but you think that you can probably help him, or at least, the seeds he's sowing here will come into play maybe later as far as dropping things to help him, because it will always be something, and maybe woe is me. Am I off the beaten path here?
No, I think he definitely did do that, especially in the beginning and the end, I would say. Not so much in the middle of the relationship, but definitely, yes, in the beginning and in the end.
So this part right here hooks you in further, where you're already kind of hooked in as far as this guy just love bombing you right there in this extravagant big way. The competition aspect of things also kind of gets you hooked in, and now there's this victim playing part. And those three things are probably the main ways that you were hooked in, and like there was no going back.
Yeah, I would say it was that, but also more so I saw him from the very beginning, just because of who he was. I put him on a pedestal. Almost like, although we were in college, almost like I had a high school mindset where he's the popular guy and he's so smart and he's great at football. And, again, he's popular. How can he like me? So going into it, I didn't have much confidence. So I guess what hooked me was just the fact of, wow, like he likes me, right? I'm not the smartest person, or so I thought. I wasn't an athlete, or, at the time I didn't feel like I had much to show. So being that he liked me when he had all of these options, to me, hooked me, because I was like, wow, I must be doing something right for him to like me.
So in a way, he chooses you, and in a way that makes you feel seen or appreciated in a way you had not felt.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Okay.
In the beginning too, which it's so funny thinking back, because I didn't even know this at the time, but a lot of the stories in the beginning were college, right? So I'll say college parties. I remember one night being at a college party, and someone must have saw us talking together, and this girl kind of grabbed my arm and she's like, "Are you talking to him?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, why? She goes, "Oh my gosh, like you need to run. Like he really hurt my friend." And at the time, it's like it didn't even sink in. I was just like, oh, like, who is this stranger telling me this? Like, it did not register until years later when I thought back, like, someone told me before all of this started, and I just didn't listen to it. In the beginning too, people would drive by his house and honk girls would be screaming his name. It was out of the movie, screaming his name. We would be in a good way, like an excited way. We'd be out to dinner and there'd be a table of girls next to us just chanting his name, for him to look over there. So all of this was just fueling me because he wasn't entertaining it. So again, I was just like, wow, he must really like me. He must really want to be with me. So yeah, the hook was he chose me, right? So there was one night where there was this bar that everyone at school went to. It was a big school, I guess, but everyone pretty much knew each other, like a big high school. There was a bar on Friday nights that we all went out to. And I'm kind of backtracking a little bit because I don't think we were dating at this point, but probably talking. So, I was doing my own thing. I'm dancing with other people. I'm with my friends. Obviously, he's in the room. And he grabbed I kind of walked by him. He grabbed my arm kind of hard, like yanked it. So I was like, okay, I kind of stopped in my tracks. And he just was like, if you don't come over tonight, I'm never talking to you again. And I just remember, I was like, what? Like scared in a way, like if I didn't do what he said, this would all end and, he would be done with me. And that just set the tone for our relationship because I was always afraid that was going to happen. I was always afraid he was going to give up on me or just leave me or be done with me, right? Like, I'm done with you. We're done here. So then he whispers in my ear, which at the time I thought was so romantic, but looking back, it's really not. He said something along the lines of, I would rather have one night with you than 1,000 with her, like the other girl that he was pursuing at that time. And I saw that as so romantic, being like, wow, like, one night with me versus 1,000 with someone else. So yeah, I guess you could say these were the planting of the seeds.
Did he say those things like relatively close to each other as far as like in the same sentence or in the same conversation?
Yeah, that was in the same conversation.
Yeah, so right there he is, putting you on this pedestal and making you feel like you are the only one. And then at the same time, here comes this negative comment, which is a controlling comment, like which is pressuring you to come over and control. And if you don't do that, everything is over. So, you're getting the polar opposites that are now ripping you inside internally. And you don't want that to end because you feel he chose you and you're feeling so special and you have to, and now you're so hooked at this point that you have to do what he says or it's gone. And that would just be devastating. You've been really hooked with a real big injection of heroin at this point where that's a big polar opposite early on to know that it can be taken away. And, that is, you're going to need your fix and he can ping pong you at that point so easily.
Yeah. And obviously at the time I didn't see it, but, throughout the entire relationship, there was so much control. I mean, it got to a point where I couldn't even think for myself. Any thought I had him in mind. Would he approve this? What would he say? What would he think? What would he do? So that, exactly what you just said. That was just proving that from the very beginning, the control was setting in. As time went on, probably skipping ahead a little bit, but, I always told myself, because once he had me, the tables turned, right? Then I was the one that was pining over him. I was the one, pursuing him and reaching out and everything. And he just didn't care after he got me. But as time went on, I told myself, well, if he didn't love me and he didn't want to be with me, he wouldn't. If he didn't want to be here, he would leave. That's what I thought. And that's what I thought throughout the entire relationship. When I couldn't figure this out, I'm like, why is he so mean? Why is he doing this? If he loves me, why is he treating me like this? But I kept going back to, well, if he didn't want to be with me, he wouldn't. If he wanted to be with someone else, he would. So these are the, false stories or hopes I told myself throughout the entire relationship. And the problem was, I thought his intentions, his heart, his soul, whatever you want to say, was the same as mine. And obviously it wasn't. At the end of the day, it all came down to control. He wanted to control me. So I guess, I say the first year was the best. And I think that's just because, the love bombing was involved, putting me on a pedestal. The fights weren't really there. But if I really think about it, I would say probably by 3 months in was the first time I saw the mask slip. But I just didn't realize it at the time. So when you look at it, that's not that much time together to already have issues. So he was a grade older than me, but he went to a different school, a D2 school, to play football. Something happened where he got kicked out of the team, so he says, because he didn't show up to practice on time, whatever. So then he ended up at our school, and because of that, he ended up in my grade, and he was able to play football for another year. We called it, a super senior. So he was in my grade, hence our undergrad graduation was the same day. So the day of our graduation, so our school is big, so it's broken into the morning graduation and the afternoon. Thankfully, our majors ended up in the same ceremony, so we were both in the morning. I remember just being so grateful because part of me was afraid that if we had different ceremonies, that he wouldn't want to stick around the whole day to then see me cross the stage. So he went first because his major was accounting, so that's A, right? So he went first, and I remember it came up to my turn, and obviously we're not sitting near each other, but he's texting me the whole time, and he always did this. He would always just try to push the buttons. It's like I knew he was joking, but at the same time, I got so nervous that he wasn't. And it was just constant fear of, is he joking? Is he not? Does he mean it? Will he actually do what he's saying? Or is he just trying to push my buttons? And he was texting me, this is taking too long. Once I walk across the stage, I'm leaving. I'm going to meet up with my family. I'm not, going to watch you walk across the stage. And I just remember being like, are you serious? Like, this is a big moment. Like, you have to watch me. I just watched you. Like, I'm meeting your parents. This is the first time I'm meeting his parents. He's meeting mine. It's a big day. And of course he did stay. He stayed, and he watched me across the stage. But it was little things like that where he just tried to make me nervous. And it's like if the attention wasn't on him for 5 minutes and it was on me, he had to jump in so I would get all rattled. And that was a word he used a lot. Oh, are you rattled? He would ask me, like, are you all rattled up? So that night, I guess that was the first time I saw the mask slip. We had a graduation. I met his parents. I remember he talked a big game about his parents. Like, they were just so mean and they were so tough, and they were tough, but I got along with them very well. We had a great relationship. Looking back though, I do think his mother had narcissistic abilities or capabilities, I should say. Because I met them, they were nice, but the first thing they said to me is, oh, where's your rope? Because, if your GPA is a certain number, you get different ropes around your neck. And I just remember being like, oh, from the very beginning, it's a weird thing to say to someone. And then she looked to her son and said, oh, you only have one? Why is that? Why don't you have all three? So that was kind of the first time I was like, okay, like maybe he's right. They're nice, but they have very high expectations. So that night we go to dinner with my family, and then everyone's because he at the time lived off campus in an apartment. So we went to a party that night to all celebrate. We're all having a great time. Everyone's having fun. And then he looks at me, he goes, so how does it feel knowing that you graduated with a nonsense major? And I was just, at this time, I never heard him really say something like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you say that to me? Like, I just worked so hard. We just graduated. Like, it's a big deal, graduating. And yeah, that was just the first thing he's like, well, or he might have even said a bullshit major. And I was just so taken back and so hurt by that. And I thought back at that point because I never really had issues with him. And that was one of the first times, I guess, I saw the mask slip because of his upbringing, right? His parents, you go to school for your major and that's your job, right? He went to school for accounting. He's an accountant. His sister went for teaching. She's a teacher. My major, I'm not doing anything with my major. Obviously, my job I have is a different field than my major. So I guess that was the first time I saw the mask slip. But, as time went on, they say, okay, the future faking, and what did that look like? I guess for us, 9 months in, I would say, we were out in the city, we were having a great night. It was a great time. And I remember that night, again, laying down, because that's what we did. We laid down, we would talk, and it was just, I felt so safe and happy in those times. And he said to me, again, 9 months in, by next Christmas, you're going to have a ring on your finger. You're going to be at the table with my family. We're going to be engaged. Like, you'll have a ring on your finger. So at this point, I held on to that story for years. I was so happy when he said that, because at that time, it's almost like that's all I was focused with. Like, I was so focused on moving in and getting engaged and getting married and having the happily ever after, that hearing that, it hooked me in more. And knowing that he felt that way when I really didn't know he did at that point, it felt like $1 million hearing that. As time went on too, the goalposts kept moving, right? Well, if we're together for a year and a half, I know we'll get married. I just know we will. As time went on, though, that story always changed. Sometimes he would say, well, I don't want to get married. I hope I have no intentions of getting married. I don't want to have kids. And then 2 months later, he's talking about getting married. So I just remember as the relationship went on, I kept getting confused. I was like, do you want to get married? Do you not? He would say things like, well, your sister is so athletic, so I'm going to have kids with her, because then our kid can be an NFL player. If I have a kid with you, they won't be athletic. So just different things like that, where just the goalposts kept moving. And, I guess that was the future faking, or, I don't want to move in until we're engaged. And then if we'd get in a fight, he would say, oh, no, we're going to move in by next year. So I was always just back and forth. I never knew what he meant, what he didn't. It was always a back and forth in that regard.
So his love bomb is taking away and then putting it back. So he takes things away. He is putting you on edge. You're on your back foot. You're trying to maybe conform or just be on not your best behavior, but to, what's the best way to put it? You're being put in a spot where you're teetering and you're uneasy. He likes to maybe feel that you are in, as you said before, a rattled situation. It's something that he gets some sort of pleasure out of. And then when, bad things might be happening for a bit, instead of love bombing, he gives you the future he promised you again. And that settles you down. Was that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. And then I guess I would take it a step further, which, I hear other people saying as well, the little bits and pieces, the breadcrumbs, right? Anything that he would say, the little breadcrumbs, I just took to heart, right? I was like, oh my gosh, he gave me so little, but I just took it and ran with it. Whatever he would give me in those moments, I just cherished. And it really wasn't much. But to me, it would go back. Oh, of course he loves me and wants to be with me. And he just has a hard time showing it, So I had a lot of these internal conversations with myself throughout the entire relationship. I always knew, though, it felt different and it looked different. And I was for 5 years just comparing myself, seeing my other friends in relationships, seeing my coworkers, family members, and just always sitting. Like, I had so much for 5 years internally. I was always just people now that know me and known me my whole life, they're like, you were so different during that time. You were so internal. You were so quiet. You were in your head. And then now when I got out of it, I'm back to myself where I'm loud and I'll talk and, I'm energetic. So I spent a lot of time just internally, just in my head and in my own thoughts for years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, you're going through this and, you're with your answer just there, or just what you said, your statement, you're probably not reaching out to other people asking, is this normal? Because maybe if you did, people would say that's not normal. So you're trying to, something might be wrong unconsciously. You don't know really what it is. And you're just in your head trying to figure it out because you're just so confused. He's really done a number on you at this point. You're at the 1 year mark, and fog is definitely set in, the fear, obligation, and guilt, and that cloud is super strong over top of you. Yeah,
that definitely makes sense. And then, as the story goes on, there were people, I definitely was isolated and I didn't realize how much I was. But I'm also someone that wears my emotions on my sleeve. So people closest to me, and I had people that I did confide in, and, of course I wouldn't tell them everything or the full story, but enough that I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So people knew, and at the time I still lived at home. So they would see when I was upset. I would be very quiet. I'd look like I was crying, and, they would say, oh, what's wrong? People would be able to tell. So let's fast forward a little bit. So that was the first year. I guess the first memory I have of the first big fight, which was really bad, was we were going on a year of dating at this point. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, the Valentine's Day, for years on end, that was our time. I used to love Valentine's Day. It was right around our anniversary. He was nice, and we'd go back to this restaurant that we went for 3 years after. And I just thought, this is our time. This is when he's going to be nice. We're going to go back to this restaurant. We're going to have a great night. We'd go to the movies after. And so we did that for the first year. He took me back to that restaurant for our first date. It was a great time. Fast forward a month later in March, around this time again, because he was a super senior, right? So at this time I'm working my first job because I graduated, and he had one more year of school, which he was in his master's program at this time. And so he could play one more year of football. So at this point, we were talking about, hey, I have my spring break coming up. At first he said, oh, I'm going to go on an all-inclusive vacation with the football guys. And I remember being like, okay, can I come? And, he's like, oh no, I'm going to go with the guys. You can't come, blah, blah, blah. Well, that never ended up happening. They probably didn't have money or whatever it was. So then I was allowed, again, second-class citizen, second in line. His friends don't want to go, so let me go with you. So I just remember I was so excited. And I did this throughout our entire relationship. Anytime we had any trips or weekends, I just jumped on it. I was just so excited because I knew he would be in vacation mode and he'd be happy. And we'd go back to, again, the beginning of the first year, that place I kept trying to bring him to and for us to get to for our entire relationship. So we booked this trip, and we're going to Mexico for his spring break. And I didn't know this at the time, but I guess, after all my research and books and everything I've learned, narcissists will take an important time to you, whether it's birthdays or anniversaries, and they'll do something bad, right? Again, to get the, kind of to shake you up or to get the attention off of you and the situation and back on them. And that's exactly what he did. This was the first time I saw him get violent. And to be honest with you, this memory is very foggy to me. It's like I remember it, but even saying it out loud, I'm like, did that actually happen? Am I saying it right? I spoke about this with my therapist, and actually last time we met, and I told her I was going on this podcast. And she said, no, don't forget, the way you told me is exactly how you're saying it now. Like, that's how it happened. So we're leaving for this trip in a week. It was Saturday night, and we went to one of his friends' parties. We were having a great night, you know, music, drinks. I'm sitting on his lap. We're taking pictures. A great night. I do think drugs were involved. I think he did do cocaine that night. And at the time I blamed it on that, you know, once he turned and got mean, I was like, oh, well, you know, he must have done drugs. And I guess that can make you very irritable and very mean. Maybe he didn't mean it. Again, just making so many excuses for him. So we're at this party. We come back home. We're laying in bed, and we were silent. We were going to sleep. Out of nowhere, he turns his head and says, get the fuck out of my bed. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? What's wrong? And he goes, get out of my bed. Get out. I don't want you here. Leave. Like, kicking me out of the house. Mind you, we've been drinking. Mind you, it's winter. Mind you, it's the middle of the night. And I was just so shocked. I was like, you know, again, they say the black in his eyes, right? He looked like he had no soul in him. He just was like, get out. Like, just completely turned. So this is where it gets a little foggy, but I remember somehow we got up out of the bed. I remember I kicked him like in the stomach, and he landed like on the wall. This got him mad. Somehow I ended up over his shoulder, and he brought me across the hall to his roommate's room. His roommate was at work. His roommate is a cop, by the way. And he threw me over his shoulder, and I landed on the floor. And at this point, I was just shocked. I was like, you know, because again, we were drinking. It just happened so fast. I was like, did this really happen? Like, he just threw me over his shoulder, and I landed on the floor. Like, ow, this hurts. Like, what is going on? So he throws me. I then have a huge bruise on my leg. I can't even explain how big this bruise was. Then, you know, I'm just trying to calm him down, because I'm thinking he's drunk, he's on drugs. Let me just calm him down, and I'll sleep on the couch. We'll sleep it off. But he had another plan. So, you know, he's just yelling for me to leave. He starts now, I'm trying to stall him. He starts throwing my belongings down the stairs, telling me to get the F out, you know, physically kicking me out of the house. So at this point, I'm screaming, I'm crying. I'm just so hurt and shocked that he is acting this way. And I said, what about the trip? We're leaving next week for a trip. Like, why are you doing this? Because at the time, you know, I always equated fighting to breaking up. I always thought, you know, this is him getting rid of me. He's done with me. This is over. I'm never going to see or talk to him again. I always thought that. So he goes, I don't care about the damn trip. You go. He writes me a check for his half, because, of course, I paid for it on my credit card, and then he was going to give me half. He writes me the check. He throws it. He goes, take the money. Go by yourself. Kicks me out. So this was, you know, the start of a lot of times in our relationship, and a lot of things that I feared, which was kicking me out of the house. You know, whenever he felt like it, whenever he just was in a bad mood or whatever, he would kick me out. So that was the first time I got kicked out of the house. At this point, I mean, again, I'm shaken up. I don't know what to do. I know I can't drive an hour home. I know I don't want to. And that was the sad thing about it, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Although this person was the one hurting me, he was the only person I wanted to take all the pain away. And it just didn't make sense why, hey, you're hurting me, but take it all away. So I ended up calling the roommate, who's my friend. And I obviously didn't tell him everything that happened, but I said, we got into an argument, and he's drunk. He's acting so strange, and he kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. Can you help me? So I met him down the road at a parking lot, because he was on shift. He's a cop. He's doing the overnight shift. We go back to the apartment. I mean, he's treating this like a real investigation. I mean, it's his apartment too. He's coming in. He's doing the flashlight. He's making sure it's safe. He's trying to see where my ex is. He's checking every corner. You know, he's just completely doing an investigation of the house. he ends up putting me, at this point, my ex is sound asleep. And that was something that really hurt me and pissed me off. I'm like, here I am. I'm heartbroken. I'm crying. I'm so sad. And he's just locked in the bedroom snoring. No care in the world. He did not care I'm out there. He doesn't care. So he's sleeping. My friend ends up locking me in his bedroom, and I slept the night there. So I to this day, I don't think my ex knows that night I was sleeping across the hall from him, although he kicked me out. And I obviously didn't have a good night's sleep. And I woke up that day at like 6 a.m. and left early. I crept out of the house so he wouldn't hear that I was there. And I went to my sister's apartment because she also went to the same school as me. And I went over, and I think I told her we got in a fight, but I didn't obviously tell her the details. And, we talked, and then noon rolls around and he calls me. Of course, I get all excited. He's calling, and he acts like it did not happen. He's just asking me a random question, hey, did so-and-so leave his phone in your car from last night? I'm like, no, I'm going over there. We need to talk. So I go over, and he just is sitting up in his bed on his computer, and he was just so calm, and he just acted like the whole thing didn't happen. I was like, hello, do you remember last night? Like, what is going on? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, what am I talking about? And I show him the bruise on my leg. This is where it gets a little hazy. I think he said, I don't see anything. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't see anything? I have a black and blue bruise on the side of my leg that is humongous. Of course you see it. That's not from me. So again, gaslighting. At this time, I've never experienced this, so I had no idea. So of course I say, well, is it a big deal? Was it just a drunken fight? Was this a one-time thing? Was he on drugs and he didn't know what he was doing? So he denies it, probably barely says sorry. And then that day we go on with our day, and everything's fine. And we go to his hometown and out to lunch and to his family's house. So yeah, that was definitely the first fight, the first time, physical abuse happened, and definitely the first moment I keep going back to. When speaking about, devaluation, obviously that was one thing. It was always something, right? It was, what are you wearing? What are those shoes? What your clothes are weird. Your hair is weird. Anything I made to eat, he didn't like. It stinks. He was someone that didn't eat fruits and vegetables. He was a meat and rice type of guy. And I'm someone that I love vegetables. So if I ever were to make something, he's just complaining. You're stinking up my house. Talking about my hair. If I'd get a haircut and come back home, like, hey, he'd be like, ugh, it's too short. Or, why are you dyeing it? I like brunettes. Why do you always get highlights? You're a fake blonde. It's just one thing after another. I could never do anything right.
So when these things are happening, this is like a constant, you can't do anything right in nitpicking situation. Are you doing your best to be as small as possible in a way? Like, how are you reacting internally, and are your actions changing because of all the nitpicking? Because it seems like, in a lot of cases, people are like, oh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But in yours, it sounds like you don't have to wait. It's always dropping. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mostly always dropping. And then if he were to ever be nice, it was more so like, oh, wow, like he's being nice. That's more shocking than how his normal behavior is. I would say it was like a science project. I was always just trying to figure out, what does he like? What doesn't he like? What can I do to make his life better? What can I do to not be an annoyance? Because I always just felt like I was there. I always just felt like I was an annoyance to him, or I was a nuisance, or everything I did was just this huge frustration to him. So it got to points where I got to a point, and I mean, I kind of hate to say this, but I used to think to myself, if you can just keep going, if you can just, go down the straight line, right? And don't ever make mistakes, basically, or, don't go out of line or don't do anything that will upset him. You'll be okay. You'll be safe. Just have to check off these boxes and just keep going. I was so hooked, and I always just, because of course you see the nice moments, right? So I always just thought, he's someone that's immature. He's obviously selfish, but he'll change. I know he'll get to a point where we'll be older and everyone around us will be settling down, and he'll do the same thing. He'll get there. And that's what I told myself. I always told myself that it will get better, just keep going. There were times that I told myself that, it sounds, I hate to say this too, but, life is short. Would you rather go through heartbreak over this person? Because I honestly thought if we ever broke up, I would tell my friends, I will end up in a mental institute. I thought I would go absolutely insane if we weren't together, if I wasn't able to see him or be with him. So I would think to myself, well, everyone has issues, just get by, be with this person, and then everyone ends up dying anyway, so it doesn't matter in the end. That's how low to a point I got throughout the relationship and how I thought. So, yeah, nitpicking everything. There was a time, and it was always about how I ate too. I'm someone with a slice of pizza. I like to either fold it or pull it apart. That's how I eat it. He would always, why are you doing that? Why are you eating it like that? You're disgusting. There was a time that, and mind you, all of my friends didn't like him. They all had their moments where they had a good moment or interaction with him. But as the years went on, the main consensus was, this guy's an asshole and he treats you like shit. So that was another thing. I was always focused on trying to get everyone to approval on him or for them to like him. There was one time my two friends stayed over the apartment, and we went out and, we were having a good night. And the next morning we went to a cafe to grab a coffee and bagel. And he, in front of my friends, starts screaming, why are you doing that? Why are you putting the cream cheese on a bagel like that? Like, hurry up, just completely freaking out on me. And my friends were like, leave her alone. She's not doing anything. She's, buttering her bagel. Like, what is it to you? So it was just moments like this where everything I did, I just had to think in my head, how is he going to react to this? How is he going to handle this? And it would always be, I knew his every move, right? I studied him so much that I could just tell when he was going to freak, what he was going to say half the time. But the times that I didn't expect it, those were the scariest, because I would just be like, what do you mean? We'd be out to breakfast, and if he ate really fast, and so do I, but he eats faster. If he would be done his meal, he would say, well, I'm leaving, you need to hurry up. I was like, can we just have a nice breakfast and talk? Like, why is it such a rush? Why do I need to, eat this so fast just to leave? So there was so much control. It was just, I used to always say, it's John's world and we're just living in it. It just everything. He called all of the shots to the point where I couldn't make a decision to save my life. And every move I've made, even if it didn't involve him, if he said no, the answer was no. And, it was almost like you look to him as a father, right? If a father says no, you don't do it. And I listened because I didn't feel like hearing him bitch. I didn't feel like him getting mad or mean. So that's something else I definitely had to deal with. There was a lot of financial abuse, which I didn't realize until after the fact when I was trying to put all the pieces together. He came from money. He always had more money than I did, yet somehow I ended up paying for essentially everything. There was a time in our relationship where because we only officially lived together for 1 year before we broke up. All the years prior to that, it was just me at the apartment, at their place, and kind of just, there for a few nights. So when he ended up moving, he moved to a town closer to the city we worked in. And I remember we were at the dinner. I was like, this is your moment. Because all I wanted was stability. All I wanted was to feel safe and to feel like I could call this place my home too. I never felt welcomed. I always felt like by him that I was just kind of tagging along, or at any point in time, he could get mad and tell me to leave in the middle of the night, as I just explained in one example. So we were out to dinner one night and I said, hey, listen, I know we're not ready to do our own apartment yet and move in and do all of that, but we both work in the same city. My parents' house is very far away from the city and your apartment is very close to the city. I said, I'm already there pretty much the entire week. I might be home 2-3 nights tops. I said, why don't I pay you rent under the table? We can discuss an amount. I'll pay you each month, and this will help out with, the groceries or any of your bills. Well, that was my first mistake. Looking back, it definitely was not fair. So him and the roommate were splitting it down the middle, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Let's just say it was $900, right? And then I was giving him $350 on the side. The other friend did not know this. That's not fair, right? But I did that to feel secure. And I did that because I thought, well, if I'm paying, he can't kick me out. He can't do any of this stuff because I'm paying to be here. So, he took that gladly, right? I mean, I feel like most people are like, oh, of course not. Like, you're my girlfriend. I want you to be here. Like, we'll get our apartment, soon, and we'll do all of that. Like, don't pay me, So it never was something that he never thought of me. He never thought, hey, is this going to put her in a bad position? And it still didn't mean anything to him. He still would kick me out. He still would do the silent treatments. That money meant nothing. And there would be times I'd be at work out of nowhere and he would text me, don't come over. And I was like, well, what do you mean don't come over? Like, because we had a schedule, right? A schedule that he made. You're here these days, you go home these days. There was no question about it. And he would say things like, you wake me up in the morning. I don't want to listen. I don't want to deal with your bullshit. I want a good night's sleep. Don't come over. And I would just, this would just send me into a spiral. Because again, I'm thinking, he's getting rid of me. He's sick of me. He's throwing me to the curb, and I would just completely spiral. And in these moments, I was just a wreck. I was just sending novels and novels, and he just wouldn't respond. And I would just try to get him to understand. And although he was doing this, I just wanted him to just listen and understand. And, there would be times too where I didn't expect him to throw this at me when I'm at work. I left things there, things I needed. So, it was always on his clock, right? Whatever he felt like doing that day, he did. I was always going to him, right? Always going to his family events, every holiday. We did not live close to each other, maybe an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. I would go to my family event and then I would drive up to him. Never once did he come to my family event. And as the years went on, my family would be like, why doesn't he come here? Like, you guys are adults now. Like, this is what you do. If you get married, you have to split up the holidays. You can't just always go to him. But, him and his mother would be like, oh, well, he has to. This is what we do. His grandfather isn't going to be around forever. He has to come. I'm like, I have grandparents too. They're not going to live forever either. Why am I just going to you all the time? Back to the financial abuse. I always thought, do what he says, do what he demands, and it will be okay. If he says he wants you to go pick up this, go pick it up and do it, because this will make him happy. And he knew that. He knew I would do whatever he asked. Anything he's told me to do, I did it. And it sounded like little things at the time until you look back and it's like, did he do that for me? Did he ever come home with a bottle of wine and say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you? It was always the other way around. It would be things as small as go pick up my pizza. And if I would be on the train coming home, I would say, well, hey, there's an issue with the train. Like I'm running late. What? Are you serious? My pizza's going to be cold. How, just freaking out on me because the train was broken. I'm like, what do you want from me? I can't control the train. It's just everything out of my power I couldn't control. He just didn't understand. It's almost like he thought I wasn't human and I was just this robot that whenever he snapped his fingers, I just had to be where he wanted me to be, do what he wanted me to do. On the weekends, he required me to go and get him donuts at Dunkin' Donuts and go to, the local CVS and grab him a Monster, great diet, right? And if I didn't do that, and if I didn't do it fast enough, I heard about it. It was so bad to the point that, he would mumble things under his breath, like, the C word, right? And I'm like, are you serious? Why are you calling me that? And then expecting me to just hop in the car and go get your breakfast. And mind you, did he ever do that for me, right? Did he ever wake up on a Saturday and surprise me with, breakfast in bed or whatever? No, never. So, I was just always putting what he needed first, so I don't like Dunkin' Donuts. I'm more of a Starbucks drinker. I couldn't even get his donuts and everything he needed and go pick up a coffee and bring it back because I was taking too long. So I would go and get all of his stuff done. I would drop it off, literally hand it to him in bed. He would just grab it and then, kind of like shoo me away, like, all right, off with your day, like literally, and just not talk to me. And then I would go back out and get my coffee because I couldn't do it in the same trip because that would take too long. There would be times where I'm at the grocery store and if he tells me to get something and say they didn't have it, I'm in a complete panic. I'm like running up and down the aisles. Do you have this? Asking the people that work at the grocery store. They're like, no, I'm sorry, we ran out or whatever. I would go to store just to find this one item just so he wouldn't freak out or get mad. And there were times where I did say, hey, like, I know you want X, Y, and Z, but they said they don't have it today. Oh, well, you should have left earlier. And if you would have left earlier, it would have been there. You waited way too long and it's your fault, essentially. And I remember after, looking back on like starting to put the puzzle pieces together and learning about narcissism. And that was one of the examples, the grocery store. And I was like, oh my God, like that happens to me too. Like, I cannot believe like this is so textbook. We couldn't even go grocery shopping together because he was just in there, he's always in a bad mood. He's just going quickly, getting what he needs. Again, we eat very differently. I don't just eat Cheez-Its and steak and rice, right? I like to have, healthy foods. We like different things. I could never in the same trip get what I needed. He'd be like, you're taking too long. You don't need to get this. You're putting bullshit in the carriage. So I would, again, acting like a 2-year-old, right? A 2-year-old having a tantrum in the store. So I would say, fine, let's get what you need. I would drop them off and I would come back out and get what I needed. These were all things that were not normal. And I knew that. But I just thought, hey, this is just how he is. He's so frustrating. He's so annoying. And I'm obviously a bigger person and I'm obviously more mature. So if I have to shuffle things around to make him happy, fine, I'll do it. He was a very simple guy to the point. What I mean by that is he didn't do much. He didn't have many friends. He came home, he ate dinner, he'd have his beers and he'd sit in his chair and watch television. And he would sit in his chair and put his hands up in the air and just snap his fingers. And that would mean, go get me a beer. I was like a dog, like, come here, little doggy, go get what I want. I would be upstairs and I would hear him snapping and he would text me and just say 2. And that means 2 beers. I did it for a while. And then I just remember opening the fridge one day. I'm like, who are you? Like, you're just like a doormat to this guy. He This is not the guy that was buying you roses and writing this love letter to you about how much they like you and how important you are to them. You're a doormat and everyone knows it. So that he would snap. He would, let's see, I'm trying to think of other financial abuse, because that was a big thing. He would make me get a certain credit card that you had to, pay the whole thing in full. At this point, I'm young, right? I'm in my young 20s. I wasn't the greatest with money in the beginning, and it was really hard for me to save, because at any point in time, he would just, demand these orders, go get this, go get that, pick up that. And it started to add up, it's like, all right, sure, a pizza here, a 30-pack of beer there. There were times throughout the week that he was just crushing beers. I'm like, you're going through 60 beers in a week. Like, this is too much money. I can't afford this. He would tell me, oh, I'll give you the money when you get back, and then wouldn't. Or I'll Venmo you, and then wouldn't. Towards the end of the relationship, there was this time, because he was also a big gambler. Like, he would love to gamble on sports and do all of that. Bitcoin. I didn't know what Bitcoin was. I still don't really get what it is. He would, at any point in time, I would walk through the door and he would say, give me $500. I would be like, what? Send me $500. I'll Venmo you right away. Like, my Bitcoin app or Cash App, whatever it was, is not linked to my bank. It won't let me do it. And he would do this several times in a week. 500 here, 200 there, 300 the next day. I'm like, do you think I'm just made of money? Like, I pay my bills. I have a little extra, at the time for spending money. And it was just all going to him. And if I didn't do that, he would freak out on me. There was a time I was at work and he texts me, send me, $500. And he's sending me this code and do all of this, and it wasn't working. I didn't know how to work the thing. So I'm sending back. I'm like, hey, like, I'm at work. Like, I'm busy. Do it now. Okay. So I'm trying to do it. It's not working. He freaked out on me. He's like, are you a fucking idiot? How dense in the head are you? Literally type in this number that I'm sending you. And I'm like, I am. It's not working. He freaked. He told me, do it now or kill yourself. That was also something he told me a lot, kill myself. Just calling me every name in the book, screaming. Now at this point, I'm in a panic, right? I'm like asking people I work with, asking these guys I work with, hey, do you guys know anything about this? My boyfriend wants me to do this. Like, I'm just panicking. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to do it. Just completely freaking out. I think somehow I ended up figuring it out. And then, doesn't even say, I'm like, I'm helping you out. You're asking me for money and you're going to yell at me, while I'm at work. So he did that. And then I'm driving home. He calls me, hey, so I'm thinking about pizza tonight. You want to grab a pizza? I'm like, hey, do you remember you freaking out at me? Well, if you would just listen to what I said, then we wouldn't have any issues. There was never a sorry. It just whatever he wanted, whatever he needed, that's what he would get in that moment. And that, those are just some examples, but the list goes on and on.
So this abuse, the financial part, is pretty heavy, and he is being, what's the best word? Bratty and entitled, and at the same time controlling. It's kind of like a combination maybe of all three, if that's fair to say. And, he's doing this and you are agreeing to it. Where are you mentally at this point? I mean, at the beginning when, after the year mark, he had you, he really had you in that web of pulling things away, the future faking and giving the future back. And now you're here in this spot. All of this financial abuse is happening. It's pretty disgusting, the way he kind of goes about it. He doesn't care at all. Like, there's no care involved here. So Where are you mentally? Like, are you a puddle? Like, how are you functioning?
Barely. I mean, I'm barely functioning. I feel like at this point, I'm just kind of going through the motions. I mean, every day, I mean, they say you're just in survival mode, and that's what I was doing. Every day, I was just trying to get by, get through the day, get through the week. Just, again, everything was just focused on him, and never once did I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I didn't want, but it just wasn't even a thought in my head. I was just so hyper-focused on this person that thinking about what I needed was never a thought. And if it was, I would never try to fuel that or do anything for myself because it was just focused on him.
Are you crying a lot? Like, are you talking to yourself or like having these conversations out loud with yourself? Like, what are you doing? What's going on? Or is this just kind of, you're automatic at this point?
I was definitely crying a lot. I mean, crying at work, crying in the car, crying at home. I wasn't really talking to myself like, what are you doing? At this point, I was so into it. I was just, what can you do to make this better? What can you do to make this, a better experience, to make him happier? Because I just kept thinking, if I just keep doing what he wants, or maybe even going above and beyond, he will appreciate me. It's all I wanted from him. I did so much for him, as little as going to get donuts for him every weekend, to giving him $250, to going to a wedding, that I just wanted him to appreciate me. I wanted him to say, thank you so much, or you do so much for me, or you care so much. I never got that. It's just, he had this arrogance about him that he just did not give a shit. And then if I ever were to get, mad or whatever, then he would give me the breadcrumbs and I would just keep, oh, yay, he didn't leave, so he loves me. That's all I kept going back to.
And did anyone in your life notice that you might have been a shadow of your former self?
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, pretty much everyone in my life, my closest friends, my family, even my coworkers that at the time didn't even know him, just the stories I would say, they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? It's just, everyone was like, this, you deserve better, So I'd always have these conversations with people. I'm like, no, but I mean, he's a big teddy bear, right? He might, I always just made excuses for him. Like, and then if he ever did do anything nice, right, of course I was highlighting that. I remember talking to people after the fact, anyone I could hear, I just wanted to know, what did you guys think of this relationship? What did you think of me? When it first ended, I was just in this discovery mode of trying to figure everything out. And, people said, it seemed like you were trying to display a life that wasn't real. Like, we could just tell online you were just putting up this front and, just making it sound like things were way better than they were. People would say, why do you only post pictures of you guys from the beginning stages, And that's because we didn't take pictures as time went on. The first year, 2 years, we took a lot of pictures and, we did a lot of things. And as the years went on, would keep going back and reposting those photos because that was the happy time. I didn't want to show a photo now because, one, we didn't take them. He wouldn't allow it. He physically did not want to take a picture with me as time went on. So another part of this was silent treatments. And these were the kicking out of the house and the silent treatments. Those are what I feared the most. I was always afraid that this was going to come up again. And that's why part of me wanted to rush things so much and just move in together officially, because I knew once we lived together officially, he can't kick me out. It's my house too. I pay the rent. I pay the bills. All my stuff is there. I have a key. That's another thing I can get into in a minute about having a key. So yeah, the silent treatments, I didn't know what it was at the time. Again, not until probably this podcast or other podcasts as well, where I learned what silent treatments are and how they are a form of abuse. And I didn't know that. I learned that silent treatments help you to stay focused on them. And that's exactly what it did. Anytime a silent treatment would happen, all I was doing was, what did I do wrong? What did I say? If I had the battered woman syndrome, if I just didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened. If I just didn't say that, this wouldn't have happened. Again, just completely just trying to figure out, how do I get back there? I would say the first time a silent treatment happened with us, because again, in the beginning, right, he was pursuing me, he was texting me, he was calling me, he was reaching out first. Very early on in the relationship, I would say, I don't know exactly when this was, a year, 2 years in, honestly, probably a year at this point. Again, he was in his master's, so he was still living in the town where we went to school. He was busy, right? He had his master's degree. He was still going to football, so he was doing that. And I was in my first real girl, big girl job. So we were texting one night, and then all of a sudden he stopped. I was like, okay, he fell asleep. Next day rolls around, nothing. This is the first time I did not hear from him. Like, no, nothing, no response, no text, not answering me. I think it then bled into the next day. I don't know if it was 2 days or 3 days, whatever it was, just, no communication. And I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, did I say something? Like, I'm just going through the motions in my head and trying to replay the night before and just trying to figure out what happened. What did I do? So at this point, I think I made up an excuse saying like, oh, I'm getting dinner with my sister and friend in the town and I'm going to stop by. I was trying to act so cool, right? Like, although he was my boyfriend, I always felt like I had to just put on this front, like I'm going to stop by. I'm in town. I haven't heard from you in a few days. Like, I'm going to see what's going on. So I said that just so I didn't show up unannounced. And I remember driving to where his class was that night and I saw his car there. I was like, okay, so he's at class. Because at this point it was so early on and this was so new that part of me was like, is he okay? Like, is something wrong? Like, why he's not talking to me? So I waited till his class was over and I went over there and I'm knocking on the door and I remember he opens the door. He kind of looks at me like I'm a crazy person. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what? And I just remember kind of pushing him forward in the door to let me in because I was so afraid that he was just going to close the door and close me out. So I remember pushing him through and just being like, what, why aren't you talking to me? Like, what is going on? And he's like, he shows me his phone. His phone is completely broken. The screen is cracked. Like, you can't see any messages. He goes, my phone's broken. Right there and then I was like, okay, he makes sense. He has an excuse. His phone was broken. That's why he couldn't call me. But then thinking back, I was like, there are so many other ways you could have gotten in contact with me. One being our mutual friend that we share. He could have had him text me and say, hey, his phone's broken. You live on Twitter. You could have DM'd me and said, hey, my phone is broken. It's just like he assumed that I just knew exactly what was going on and I could read his mind. And because he had proof or some example or excuse, it made it okay. So, I just let it go because I was like, oh, his phone died or broke. He's getting a new one. That's why he didn't talk to me. And that was the first time I noticed the silent treatment. And then I went home and I get a DM, right? Because his phone's broken. I love you. Okay, so the breadcrumbs, that's all I needed. That's, after the silent treatment, a little bit of love or anything he could give me, I'm fine. Out the window. There was a time that, this happened a lot, honestly, but there was a time that we were at his apartment, again, obviously, because I'm always there. I was washing the dishes, and he came up behind me, and he had a water bottle. And he kind of, dropped water on my head, guess being funny, trying to be playful and make a joke. So I remember being like, kind of laughing, and I thought we were playing too. And I took the dirty sponge that I was cleaning with, and I kind of, flung it. Right? So the water flung out in the air and it hit him and it got all over him. And he looked at me like I just shot someone. He was so taken back that I threw water on him, even though he did it first. He kind of walks up fast to me. He slaps me on the back of the head hard, kind of like, again, like a dog. How dare you? Shoo. How could you do that to me? Slaps me in the back of the head. I'm like, ow, like, why did you freaking hit me in the back of the head? Freaks out on me, pushes me out of the house again, and didn't talk to me for days after that. So, of course, I'm a wreck, right? I'm driving home. I'm calling my best friend. I'm bawling my eyes out. I tell her what happened. I think I suppressed the hitting on the head because it wasn't until recently I started to think back of this that I was like, wait, there's more to the story. He hit me in the head. So I just remember driving, and I just did this drive all the time, just bawling my eyes out. When am I going to talk to him again? If I just didn't do that, he wouldn't have, done this. If I just would have, back to that whole thing. I think this was the time too, because I think this was a Friday night. So I was so mad, like, oh, I ruined the weekend. Like, I could have had a whole weekend with him, and it's Friday, and I'm driving back and crying. So I remember laying in my bed and, just bawling my eyes out, just so heartbroken, so sad over this. My dad went out with his buddies for a beer, and he comes home, and I think he heard me crying, or I think he was just shocked I was home because he knew I was supposed to spend the weekend there. At this point, I couldn't hide it. I just, I was crying. He lays in bed next to me, kind of holding me. Like, he's like, this is not right. He goes, a man that loves a woman does not treat someone this way. And it was so heartbreaking to hear my dad say that because I knew he was right. And I grew up, I saw how he treated my mother. And I saw that, she was allowed to be who she was, and they didn't fight. And if they did, it was a stupid little annoyance, and it never got bad. It never got nasty. It never got cruel. And I just remember, just feeling so hopeless in that moment. Like, oh my God, like my dad knows, like he knows how he is. And, everything he's saying is just so hard to hear. And as time went on, my parents definitely started to put the puzzle pieces. I mean, I don't think they knew about everything, but they had a good idea because he wasn't one of those narcissists that was just, you couldn't really tell, right? Like, oh, they're just so nice and this and that. Like, he always had an attitude, right? So people knew that he was just difficult. People knew he was very selfish. And, these different stories just came up throughout the years. So that was always difficult, that my family started to believe that, or not just believe it, but see it and kind of figure things out as well. So I guess fast forward a little bit, because these stories I can tell, I would say they're different, but they're all kind of the same at the same time. At this point, I'm lost, right? I'm trying to find my way. I so badly just want to move in. I think to myself, if we could just move in, things will get better because we'll be able to communicate. And if he gets mad, he'll be able to talk to me about it, opposed to just not talking to me for days. Oh, I guess, sorry, if I can back up to that last story with the sponge. We didn't talk for days. I was a wreck. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I was at work. I'm just crying. Everyone's like, what is wrong with her? I was just so worked up. My family saw it. It was so embarrassing. Finally, I think Wednesday rolls around and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going over there, because at this time, again, I'm paying him rent, but he just kicks me out and doesn't talk to me for days and is not responding. And I'm sending him these novels like, can we just talk? Can we be adults and have a conversation? We've been dating for probably at this point now 3 years, right? We've been dating 3 years. How can you just not talk to me? How do you not care? And that always boggled my mind. I'm like, how does this person not give a shit? Like, he just is sitting there getting these messages and just literally not responding and not caring. So at this point, I'm like, I need to go over there. I can't live like this anymore. I'm done. And I had these moments throughout the relationship where I would get kind of the confidence to, just end it. And then of course never did. So one of my best friends was like, I'm going to drive you over there, go in, get your stuff. Let's be done with this. So I'm like, okay, all right, let's do this. So I finally text him and I'm like, hey, like, obviously my things are over there. I need to come over and get my stuff. I didn't expect you to not talk to me for days. I'm coming over tonight. I'll be there at 8. So I get there. He opens the door. He has this very calm, cool, collected, attitude, where he lets me in. Hey, how are you? I'm like, at this point, I'm like trying to be all tough. I'm like, good. So I walk in, I storm in, I start to pack, I'm grabbing boxes, I'm grabbing my stuff. I'm obviously at this point, I don't know if I'm actually going to go through with it, but I'm trying to make it known I'm pissed. I'm not doing this anymore. So he goes, let's just sit down. Let's just talk. So I sit down and I remember looking around the apartment. I'm like, why does it look so different in here? Why is the apartment so clean and so organized? And, he hung up things that he's been meaning to hung up, and, the floor is swept, and, it just looks so neat and tidy. And I remember thinking that was so weird, like, did he just have a moment and need to be by himself and clean? I don't know, so I just remember noticing that. And he goes on, because again, he probably got nervous I was going to leave. So what does he do? He gives me breadcrumbs. And he goes, I don't talk to you during these times because I'm just so mad. I don't want to say anything I'll regret. And I don't want to do anything that I'll regret. So I have to just shut down and be by myself for a few days. Right? So he says that, and I'm looking around the house. I'm like, okay, his story's adding up. He needs to be alone. He wanted to just clean the house and be by himself. Like, okay, this is starting to make sense. So he just he spoke about it in a way where, I just started to think maybe this is how he is. Like, I know it's not normal. I know it's not normal behavior, but maybe this is just how he is. He hits walls and he doesn't want to be mean or, say bad things to me. So he shuts down. He's by himself for a few days, and then he comes back to his senses. And then he goes on to say, I don't want you to move out. Like, I really think by next year, like, we're moving. We're going to be moving out together. We're going to get our own place. So ding, ding, ding. That's what I'm looking to hear. So it was just, again, it's like once he came around and once we were finally able to talk, it's like I forgot why I was mad. And that happened a lot. In the moment, he wouldn't talk to me. And if he did, it would be 30 seconds of a conversation before he would shoo me away and be done with it. So when I was finally days later after fights being able to sit there and I guess half have a conversation with him, it's like everything just got thrown out the window. And that was part of the cycle. It's like, I know I didn't like that. I hated that. But I think in a sick way, I was just so addicted to it because, the highs are high, the low are low. And I remember, I honestly think that night too, he got me to sleep with him. And, I just remember doing it. I'm like, I can't, this feels so wrong. Like, how does he just get away with everything? And how does it always just come back around? Like, I was so sad all week and I didn't eat and I didn't sleep. And I called a therapist for the first time and he just didn't care. So I remember leaving that night and I was on cloud 9. I walk outside, I have a smile ear to ear, and my friend kind of looks at me like, well, did you break up with them? Like, what is going on? And I'm like, no, we talked about it. And, I just, again, made excuses, downplayed, and she just kind of rolled her eyes. And then the next day, he's back to himself, right? Of texting me good morning, letting me know he's in work. And I just remember feeling on top of the world, being like, yep, we're back. We're good. We're back on.
So how many Hoover cycles did you go through until the end actually happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the real answer to that, right, is 5 years worth. But at this point in the story, I would say it was another 2-ish years of Hoovers back and forth before the end of the end. So I guess fast forward 2 years forward, obviously at this point we're officially living together, and, I walked into it telling myself, if things don't change, like, this is it. You move in. If things still don't get better, then it was pretty much a trial period for me. And I would say, the end of the end was when, at this point, I was gaining more confidence with myself. I think I might have mentioned I was getting my confidence at work. I was good at my job. I was praised there. And I just got to the point where I just didn't want to go home anymore. I knew when I went back, it was such a cold and evil environment. And when I was at work or when I was with my friends, I just felt happy. So I felt like I was living two lives. Mind you, my work was about over an hour from my house. My family was over an hour from where I was living at the time with him. So I was just so isolated up there. And I just remember, driving back, and, I just felt so much peace when I was in the car by myself, listening to podcasts and just, in my head, I guess, and just thinking. And, I would go back to the house after work, and it was so cold in there. He used to say, you're acting like a bull in the china shop coming in. And, I just felt like the second I opened the door, I had to literally tiptoe around him. Half the time he wouldn't even look up. Seriously, I'd be walking in, and, he would just be sitting in his chair and, barely could just, look up and say hello. So, I got sick of going home to that. I was constantly comparing myself to everyone around me and just seeing how, in a relationship, you go home and that's your person. How was your day? This is what happened. You're supposed to confide in them, be your best friend. And, I don't want to say out of the movies, but I saw my parents had that. I saw my friends had that. And I just started to wonder, why don't I? So, there were obviously, some big bumps in the road towards the end, which really led to my decision. But I would say I got the strength from just talking to friends, listening to podcasts. There was a reason why I was so, not so much the Narcissist podcast at this point, but just like self-love and relationships, and just hearing them and knowing, wow, my life really just is very, very different than how it should be. One of the last arguments that we had before I pulled the trigger on the relationship was a stick of butter was thrown at my head, just due to the fact that I used the butter that he was using, and I happened to have sweet potato on my knife, and he freaked out, and he completely just chucked the stick of butter across the room and slammed me in the head. And yeah, I guess I would say that was the last straw for me, where I was like, I can't keep living like this. This is not normal. Like, who does this? Who acts like this? The scary thing is he was showing me all along the way, right? A stick of the butter here, a slap on the head there, the story earlier of dropping me on my side, that was all building up to something bigger. And I think at that point I knew that. So, yep, the stick of butter was thrown, an argument happened. It took so much courage for me to do it. It wasn't that night, right? He didn't throw a stick of butter at my head, and then I woke up the next day and broke up with him. This was something I was sitting on for so long, like I'm sure a lot of people do. You contemplate, you think, what's going to happen? What will this look like? How do I do it? I really didn't know at that point, but I just knew that it was almost like I mourned the relationship, I would say maybe even like the last 2 years. And then when it came to that point, I was just so done. I was just so numb. I was numb at that point to what I had to do. I just knew I had to do it. So the next day I was working from home. He went to work. And then he comes, in the house like any old Friday, pack a beer in his hand and tries to act like it never happened, just like he always did. And, trying to make plans for the weekend. And this was probably I think this was the hardest thing I had to do at this point, but really the aftermath and getting the strength to completely stay away was the hardest. But, I sat him down. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. In the beginning of us breaking up too, I say beginning because it obviously just didn't end that day, but it's almost like I didn't want him to feel bad. So I was wording it in ways of like, it isn't just you, it's us. We both aren't respecting each other. We both aren't, being good partners to one another. I don't know why I played that card, but at the time I thought it was the only way I had to do it. But I had to break the news to him. I said, I can't do this. And he was pretty upset. He completely stormed out of the house at that point. I didn't know where he went. He was gone maybe an hour. To this day, I don't really know where he went. He said he just drove away or something. And at that point, we still had, this was late October. We were still in our apartment until the end of the year. So we still had a little bit of chunk of time that we were living under the same roof. And then from there, I'm sure a lot of people on this call, when the end happens, there's so many emotions, and there's so much back and forth after that I can't even really begin to describe it. But the first thing I did feel, I'll be honest with you, was relief. I really did. I felt free. We broke up, and I just remember going upstairs and just having a glass of wine in my hand and texting my best friends. And, I just felt free. I had this strength in me that I was just yes, I can do what I want now. I don't need to just be under this person's control. But he did everything in the book. It was so textbook. It's not even funny. Started off with being mean and then sending texts of when to leave the house, when to move out. Again, just telling me everything I had to do. Saying that, he can't believe that after one argument, I'm laughing saying this out loud. After one argument, I just decided to throw away 5 years, that I'm not giving it a try, just everything. And I told him, I'm listen, if you really think it's after this one argument, it's not. So I would say, at that point, we were still under the same roof. And for a while, it almost, we broke up, right? So we're broken up. But at the same time, we're still living together. So it almost felt like we were just kind of still doing what we do. And, I literally would look at the calendar, just counting down the days, but not in a good way. Me getting nervous, oh my God, okay, it's a month away from when the lease is done. Oh my gosh, it's 2 weeks. It's 1 week. I was so afraid of when that day came that was going to be it. And it would go back and forth. He would say, this isn't fair. And he had a point. I will say this. He had a point that it's not fair if we're just playing house, pretending like nothing happened. Every day he's reminded that things are different, but here we are under the same roof. That I understood. So, it was obviously easier to be away from him than when I was there, because I felt in the beginning for so long, I felt so bad, and it's just the reality of it, someone was just so horrible to me for so long. Why was I feeling bad for him? Trauma bonding, right? I was trauma bonded to him. Everything got flipped, and I just felt like literally the worst person in the world. He would come home from work. He just looked like a sad puppy. He's dragging his feet. He's just saying, I'm so sad. I'm so heartbroken. I'm not eating. And he again, to this day, I don't know if this was true. Maybe there was some truth to it. I don't know. But, I believed him. He did look skinnier. He did look sad. He and I just thought, wow, maybe he does care. Maybe that he needed a kick in the ass. So at this point, I really didn't know, am I going to go through with this, or do I just want to, be so strong right now and do it, but then maybe I'll go back to him. So for a very long time, I held the power, and that felt good. That felt good that after all these years that I got that power back. And, you know, there was one night when we were still living together, but broken up, he was on a work trip. And I just remember going to Barnes and Nobles. And at this point, I put the puzzle pieces together, the narcissism. And I wish I remembered how I figured out about it, because everyone seems to know, like, oh, so-and-so told me, or I heard it here. I don't remember. I really don't know how I came across it. But once I knew, I knew. And I just remember being in the Barnes and Nobles. I'm sitting in the aisle. I'm just picking up every book possible that I can. Stop Walking on Eggshells, Narcissism, this, that. I spent like $180 on books. And I just went home. I'm reading every book. I'm writing down. I'm listening to sad music. I'm having wine. And I'm just like bawling my eyes out. And that was kind of like my moment, I guess. But, you know, towards the beginning of the breakup, you know, he just totally turned into an angel. And this surprised me a lot, because I really pictured when this day happened that he was just going to be so mean, like cut me off, you know, what I was afraid of the entire relationship, and that's it. And really, he did the absolute polar opposite. I mean, he was an angel for months. And I remember writing in a journal, I still have it to this day, like a really long entry for like a few months of just me writing throughout everything and how I felt. And one thing I said is, I feel more loved by you right now than I have when we were dating. Like, that doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense. Like, this is not supposed to happen like this. This is how I wanted to be treated. This is how I wanted to feel by him the entire time. And I didn't get that. So, you know, to say the Hoovers, you know, that's an understatement. I mean, flowers sent to work, love letters written to me. He would sit up all night and write these love letters and then read it to me the next day. Just being so sweet, because he was never sweet. You know, he was never kind through text or kind in person. He would call me, and, you know, for once I felt so heard. You know, I'd be driving home from the city back to my parents' house, and, you know, he just would literally sit there and listen and ask me how my day was, and, you know, ask me questions about me. And I just remember talking out loud, and I'm like, oh, wow, he's not interrupting me, or he's not hanging up, or, you know, he's actually just talking to me and listening. Like, all these things, I just was so shocked that he was doing this. One thing I don't know if I'd mentioned this, but I found out through a mutual friend of ours that he was actually, that summer prior, he was planning on asking my dad that summer to marry me. And once he got his bonus check from work around the holidays, he was going to do it. So there, again, I'm whatever you want to believe in, right? I am a believer that, you know, God or someone out there like told me this, you need to leave now. Like, there's a reason why I got that strength in October to leave, because he was going to propose to me in December. So I got out in the nick of time, because the reality is, if he would have asked me, I probably would have said yes. And this could be a completely different story right now. You know, if we were engaged, I don't know what would have happened, but yeah, he was going to propose, and he threw that at me saying, I was going to propose to you. And I thought he was just saying it in the moment to make me feel bad, until it was confirmed by a mutual friend, I know she would not lie to me about that. Like, she wouldn't.
Well, one thing I kind of do want to point out here is, you know, you're doing a really good job of repelling the Hoover in the sense of what he's doing here, because it is a change of tactic here that you're not used to, and that change of tactic is confusing you. Yep. And that's really hard to resist going back or just being with him, or just prolonging what's happening. And the other thing that I wanted to discuss was when you said that you know, he looked like he was genuinely sad. Which was also confusing, the emotion that he was showing. And I just want, for people listening, you know, someone in these situations can show that they are sad, and they can. However, where that sadness comes from is two completely different things. Is he sad for you, or is he sad for himself? And, you know, is that sadness coming from a loss of the relationship and like what it means to both of you? Does that even come into play here? Or is this sadness purely a selfish sadness of like something's being taken away from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a really big distinction of, this person doesn't like me. I'm going to, or this person's had enough of me. I'm sad because I've lost, but
Yeah.
is it like, oh, they don't like me? What's going on with them? Like what's happening there? If I really like them, do I just let them kind of go? I've recognized what I've done. I'm going to go work on myself or do whatever. That's not in his mind right there. Because technically nothing has really changed. He hasn't gone and done any work. He's just upset for himself.
Yeah, and I think I would say, too, that, and I didn't know this at the time, but he's not sad he's losing me. It's not me personally that he's crushed that I'm leaving now. He's sad that he is losing control. Mm-hmm. He is sad that he had someone that he literally could control in every single way, and now that person is walking away. So it's a sense of losing control is what they're sad over. Not you. So I hope people know out there if they've gone through a similar thing, or if you are going through it now, like please don't get tricked. And I hate to say this, they're not sad over you, but these people, they don't see you. They see you as objects, and they see you. What can you do for me? And that's all it is. It's a lack of control that they're spiraling out of control. But I definitely was confused. It's like I knew it to some, because at this point I'm starting to put the puzzle pieces together. I kind of know about narcissism. So everything he was doing, I kind of knew what he was doing. But at the same time, when you're in it, it's so confusing because you're like, well, because then you go back to, we've been together for so long. And this is, at the time I thought this is my person. Like he knows me, I know him. Like, of course he's sad. So it's an incredibly very, very confusing an emotional time when this is happening. And really what I probably should have done is, you break up and that's it. With these people, you're supposed to cut the cord, and I didn't do that. I let him in my life for so long after the initial breakup that, all of these other emotions and things happened when I probably could have just stopped it and, right away. But no, there was a part of me that was loving it, right? Because I wanted this for so long, and part of me thought, let me ride this wave out. How long is he going to be nice for? How long is he going to do all this stuff and say all this stuff and write me these long messages? And so in the beginning when we broke up, I definitely put all the blame on me because I just wanted him to feel comfortable. I wanted him to feel not sad. So I, in a way, manipulated it and I lied. I was just like, listen, it's not you. I'm going through something. Like, I think I want to go to therapy. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I just totally put it on me. And, we would go out to dinner or, he would take me out somewhere because now all of a sudden he wants to take me out on dates and spend all this time together. And I remember he would tell me, which is something they do, and he's like, you know what, this is your parents' fault. Your parents didn't like that we moved this far, and, they put in your head that you shouldn't be doing this commute and that you should be closer to home. This is their fault. And I hate to say it, I sat there and I was like, yeah, they did. Because I wanted him to feel comfortable and okay. I didn't want him to be in any pain at all. That crushed me to see him in pain. And I didn't want him to think I was the bad guy. So anyone that he wanted to throw and say it was their fault, I was like, yeah, you're right. It is. Like, that's something I really regret to this day, but I didn't know what to do in that moment. So that went on for a very long time. Then it comes up to when we need to move out. And again, it just was like a very, very prolonged breakup and this long thing of, just until the no contact actually happened. But move out day, it was weird because, he would be sad, but then like when we're moving out, he kind of just acted like nothing was wrong. Like we kind of were just acting like friends, like, hey, yeah, grab the broom, or, do you want to take, he was looking through all the pictures. He goes, can I keep this one? Like we went on a cruise and we had these nice pictures taken. I really want to keep this one. I want to keep that one. So I was like, sure, keep all that. And it was just kind of strange. And I just remember when we spent all day cleaning up the house. And And I just remember looking around in the living room, and I just broke down. I was just like, this is actually happening now. This apartment, this is what I wanted for so long, was to get the apartment and start playing house and just move on with life. And now I'm looking, it was literally 1 year that we lived together officially. And now this whole house is empty, and this is real. This is happening. So I just remember sitting on the floor, bawling my eyes out. And I just felt like I knew I had to do it, but part of me just felt like this feels wrong, or you're making a mistake and you're giving up on someone that clearly loves you and clearly wants to be with you. So, to say I was confused, to say I was going through every emotion at this time, I was. That night, so at this time, we're moving out. I'm moving back with my parents for a year. So we're in completely different states at this point. He ended up moving back to his hometown, same state that we lived in together. His parents owned a condo, and it just happened to be the condo opened up, so he was able to move in. Again, fate, right? Everything was just lining up, so he had his own place. So we cleaned out the entire apartment. At this point, we're starving. Like, we did not eat all day. I was like, whatever, we're breaking up. I'm not going to see you ever again anyway. So he goes, you know what, let's just go get a bite to eat. Like, we're both exhausted. We're both starving. Like, let's just get a burger. I was like, okay. Ends up getting a huge snowstorm. I'm stuck there. A huge snowstorm. I cannot drive an hour and a half unless I want to crash and die. So I spent the last night I've ever spent with him at his new house. And, you know, we go to dinner. Everything seems, you know, again, we seem like friends. I'm like, you know, this is so strange and weird. The guilt. Oh my God, did I have guilt? I had guilt for so long. I would picture him in his new house by himself, like just sitting there watching TV, and I would just lose it. I felt like I was abandoning him. I felt like I was just leaving him to go to this better life, to go live this happily ever after life. And, you know, I don't know why I felt so much guilt for wanting to live a happy life after everything I just went through with him for so long. I felt so guilty. So looking around his new house and just, I'm like, wow, like this is it. He's here. That night, I told him, I was like, look, I don't want to sleep in the same bed as you. I'm going to sleep on the couch. Like, we'll leave in the morning. So he, somehow I ended up upstairs in his room because he wanted to talk about something. So we're literally just laying there talking. And I saw the mask slip. And this was the first time since the breakup I saw it slip. And I forgot what I was talking about, but I was saying something about the breakup or about, you know, how we need to move forward. I don't know what I was saying, but he goes, all right, I'm done with this. You know, I'm done with talking about this. Like, he basically just shooed me away. He's like, get out of my room, go downstairs. Like, and I was like, there it is. There it is. Like, after all this time, you know, of him trying to be nice, the mask slipped, and that's when I knew that he is the same person. The same thing would have happened. And I just was like, okay, yep. And I went downstairs and I knew the mask slipped. So the next day we wake up and that was it. I was like, he's going to work. I'm saying goodbye to him and I'm now driving away. I moved out and I'm driving away. It felt weird saying bye to him because I kind of felt like I was just saying bye for the day. Like, bye, like, have a good day at work. And I just remember looking, because I don't know why he left before me, then I left at his apartment. I don't remember, but I just remember looking out the window and I just staring at him like, this is the last time you're going to see him. Like take a good look, basically. Like, he's going to get in his car and drive away, and that's it. So that's what happened. He left. I thought, that's it. No, I'm not going to see him. Part of me knew I was going to see him again. I knew that at some point, somehow, I would see him just because of our mutual friends that we do have. So 2 weeks later, we both get invited to our mutual friend's birthday party. And I get invited. I obviously know he's going to get invited. And I get a text, are you going? So that was kind of hard, you know, to see him again. But, you know, the mutual friend we had, they had other friends there. They didn't know we broke up. So they were asking us, so how's life? What's going on? What's new? And we just kind of looked at each other like, nothing's new. Nothing's going on. So, to speed things up after, the point I just wanted to make here was it was hard to break up. It was every emotion in the book I went through. And after that was the last time I saw him, was at that birthday party, which was 2020, I think, of January or something like that. That was the last time I saw him. And then we officially stopped talking in February, end of February that year. And that's when things got pretty bad, So he was still doing the whole Mr. Nice Guy thing, trying to keep in touch with me, this and that. Saying he's going to show up to my work and just propose to me, everything in the book, he was doing. And then it got nasty. So that February, he just did so much intimidation. Like, he needs to know where I was all the time. One time he found out I was in New York, and he was just, who are you with? I know you're with the guy. I know you're on a date. And then he tried using our mutual friends against me. I'm with them. They're saying that you're being so sketchy. You're lying. I caught you in a lie. And then the next day he texted me being like, so are you ready to tell me the truth? Like, you lied to me last night. Who are you with? And it just started to get bad from here. So I guess we can say in the end he discarded me because he reached out to me at the end of last February and said, I can't do this anymore, which is also a tactic they use, which is guilt. I can't do this anymore. This is too hard on me. We talk, because at this point, we would barely talk, right? Maybe he would send me a funny video and I would say, ha. That would be the extent of our conversations per day. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. We talk for 1 second and then I'm just staring at my phone all night waiting for a response. Like, unless you change your mind and want to get back together, like, I can't talk to you anymore. And at this moment, I felt bad, but I felt so relieved because I knew I just couldn't do it. I knew, like, although I broke up with them, that I couldn't be the one to say, stop contacting me or don't talk to me. I physically couldn't. I don't know why. So the fact that he did it gave me so much relief because I was like, okay, good. He did it. I thought we ended it well. I wrote this long, nice message to him, which I didn't even believe with what I was saying. But again, I just wanted him to feel comfortable. I wanted him to not feel sad. And I just wrote this nice long thing, and he told me he was crying. I told him I was too. And then we said goodbye. And that was the last time that we ever spoke. Never again did he contact me. I didn't delete him off of social media until that July. So we still had each other on Snapchat and on Twitter at this point. There was one time I did reach out to him because that's when the harassment started. So, he went through every emotion, guilt, let's be all nice. I was at this point, he would send Snapchat stories and it would just be set to me. Sometimes just me, but other times me, my sister, and one of my best friends. I know this because other people would say they don't see the story there. And it was bad. He would, just take a picture of something and write the C word or, mock me, right? If I posted something 3 days later, he would do a story and he would be sitting there and he would be mocking everything I'm saying. And I hate to say this because I don't know why, but in a way I found it funny. And I know that's such a weird thing to say out loud. Like, it hurt me. And I don't know if I use this as a defense tactic, but I also kind of laughed at it. And I forget what my therapist told me, what it meant at the time, that's the reaction or emotion I had. But that was a really strange thing that here someone is making fun of me and I'm laughing about it. He would, just complete harassment to the point where I would get anxiety. I would get this pit in my stomach. And then, he just was acting stalkerish. I wouldn't see his name looking at my story. Yeah, I know he's looking at it because he would mock my story the next day, everything I said word for word. So it was just starting to creep me out. And I started to wonder, does he have my passwords? I know he knew my passwords at that time. It started to really freak me out about email and just everything. So that's when, come July, and I think I mentioned my therapist on here who was on your show, Debbie Tudor, is my therapist who I see. She is great. And, we've been working together now for probably a year. And where I started with her a year ago to now it's amazing. And she told me, she goes, you need to delete him. You need to delete him. He will do this until the day he dies. She goes, he could be married with 3 kids. And as long as you're letting him, he will continue to harass you. So that's why I knew that he's not going to stop. He's not going to just wake up one day and just give up. He literally would have kept doing this until the end of time. So last summer is when I deleted him off everything. He knew within seconds. He must have had like an alert because I deleted him, got home 5 minutes later, went to go check his Twitter, and it said blocked. So he knew within 5 minutes that I deleted him. And yeah, that was the end of that. I was blocked, still am blocked, and that's great. And then, so I guess just so people know, it's not like, okay, that's it, the curtain closed, story closed. No, it was, and it's still to this day, that I would say this last year working with Debbie, it has been the hardest thing. Even before Debbie, I just say this just because I wonder if anyone else out there did this. There would be moments where I would say, oh my gosh, I do love him and I want to be back with him, or, maybe this is just a mistake. I would feel that way. The guilt, I know I went over that already, but so much guilt, and, his family was still kind of involved with me, and sometimes they would reach out to me. I just felt like I let everyone down. I was like, for so long, we've all had this relationship and this family, and I just left everyone. I just got up and left. And, in those moments, it's just sad to think that I just didn't see that what I deserved and the worth that I had. I was just still so focused on everyone, and learning now why I was so focused on them wasn't because I cared about them. Sure, maybe I did to a certain extent, but what it really was is I was distracting myself from looking inwards. And what do I, and, being a codependent, the longer that you focus on everyone else and everyone else's feelings, and are they okay, and let me fix, and let me be that person to make it all better, you are just avoiding yourself. And that's what I did. I just avoided myself, avoided what I needed, avoided how I needed to heal, and just focused on everyone. So yeah, the year of healing, I listened to every podcast out there. I got obsessed with it, absolutely obsessed with learning, and it's great to learn this, and it's great to listen to all this stuff, but at some point you need to look inwards and start looking at scapegoats and codependence and looking inwards to yourself. So, I would say within the last few months is when I finally deleted his whole family. And, Debbie would talk to me like, why are you keeping them? Like, why was it so hard to cut the cord from them? And I couldn't answer that. I don't know why it was. I wanted to just see what their life was like without me. And she told me, she goes, you're not that special. Why do you think that they are caring what you're doing, or, living their life for you? I forget how she worded it, but she made so much sense. I was like, you're right. Why do I think that I'm hold this power in their life? And, so I learned so much from her. And something I will say, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, I'm not saying it has to be Debbie, but someone like her. Find a therapist that understands this, because I wasted months with a therapist. Not that every therapist out there that doesn't specialize in this can't do the job, but I didn't do my research, and I went with the first person that would take me, and I sat there and I spoke to her for so long, and it did nothing. She did not understand. She basically told me I'm obsessed with him, that I'm in love with him, and I want to be with him, and he wants to be with me, and we just should be together. And she didn't get it out. She almost put me backwards, being like, oh my gosh, she's giving me all this information. I had an issue with a therapist before Debbie where, and this is the same lady, that when I finally found Debbie, I told her, hey, I'm going in a different direction. I found someone a little bit more specialized for what I'm looking for. And she actually turned on me and completely turned toxic on me and had me call her and sit there for an hour. And she told me how I always do this. I always give up on people, how, blah, blah, blah. Everything I told her, she used against me. And it was absolutely toxic. So I say that to be aware that not every therapist is good, and there can be toxic therapists out there as well.
And before we end off the show, what are the words of wisdom or advice that you have for everyone listening?
Just knowing that you have one life, right? You have one life to live, and you don't deserve to be unhappy every day. You don't deserve to cry. You don't deserve to wonder, why do people have this and I have that? If you're thinking that way, you're not happy and you're not in the right relationship. And I used to think being with someone for so long and showing that you stay together is love. Look, ups and downs, we're together 5 years, that's love. That's not love. That is not love. Just to stay with someone, to say you've been there for so long. So know your worth. If something feels off and wrong, it is. And don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to start over, to start over and get the life that you deserve, because you have one life to live.
Well, Regan, thank you for being on the show today, sharing your story, sharing your knowledge. You did a really good job, and a lot of people are going to learn from not just your story, but your insight of what happened, especially at the end there, and everything you went through. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And for Regan and I, we hope you have a good night.